Hello, welcome back. Thanks for tuning into the stream. I see somebody's in here already. Just setting up real fast. Things are looking good. Last week we worked on a new inventory system as we're moving this game over from our 2D systems test into a 3D world. The systems test basically just had a list of items that you drag and drop from that list into some really spaghetti coded boxes. And we're building out a proper inventory system now because everything kind of relies on that. But we were just starting on that. Excuse me. We were just starting on that last week. And we made a lot of progress. We got the inventory system working. We got a crafting system working. We even got interactable objects in the world working. Using tools on those objects gives you new items. I think what we'll do is we'll just go in and... thanks, Tony. We'll go in and play around a little bit with what we have, and then we'll talk about what we'll do next. Let me jump over to there. As you can see, we've got this 3D world again. Looks much better than our old 2D just menu simulator, basically. We've got our player controller here that we've just set up as kind of a placeholder. Don't really know a lot of the design stuff, how we want things to look. Just kind of putting in placeholders for vibes, like it's very cozy and fantasy and colorful and bright right now. We'll probably change most of this. But we've got our new, let me go full screen. We've got our new inventory system here. We don't have image generation yet, so that's something where maybe we'll do one of these streams. Probably not today because we want to support it on our Chroma Golem API first. And I guess that's a good segue into showing that off real fast. If you like what we're doing here, we are Chroma Golem. My name's Andrew. I'm one of the co-founders of the game studio. We're building this game called Elixir Emporium, but we also have this API that it's built on top of. So if you like some of the stuff that we're doing with it, you should go check out the API at api.chromagolem.com. Supports a few different models underneath it, so you can pick and choose which models you want, what kind of pricing you want. But it's just text generation right now. We're going to add in a few more image generation, audio generation, sound effect generation, stuff like that. So really, we're building it for ourselves for our own games, but we made it available for other people to use too. So go check that out if you want. Back to the game, what we've got is we've almost ported over everything from our systems test. We've got our items here. We've got this very simple crafting system. So what's a good example of something we can craft? Maybe we combine an axe and a hammer. So there's no recipe in the game for what an axe and a hammer makes. So what we do is we're asking an AI under the hood of when you take this item with these stats, these attributes, this description, everything, and you combine it with this item, its stats, its attributes, everything, what item do you get? And under the hood, it's creating a new item in the game engine, and it's also saving that recipe. So we got a master craftsman's tool out of it. It's a versatile tool that excels in both constructing and deconstructing with ease. Yada, yada, yada. It's got wood cutting, it's got construction, it's got demolition. These are all kind of placeholder stats that they don't not do anything, but they are very hand-wavy in what they do, and I'll talk about that in a second. But once you've crafted those two together, the item's been created in the actual engine. That recipe is saved, so you can go ahead and create more of those now if you want. You can also swap that out. Maybe an axe and scissors make something cool, I don't know. a craftsman cutter. So you get a little bit more wood cutting stats on it and you get some precision cutting. It's just fun kind of to make these new things. And obviously the next question is, so what do you do with all these tools? So we actually have in this world, all the objects are tagged as, objects you can interact with. So we've got a kind of setup for a hotbar down here, almost like Minecraft. If you drag some items down here, you can use the scroll wheel to select your chosen item. And then if you go and click on any object in the world, some of these aren't rigged up just because I'm working with placeholders right now. But for example, we've got this chaos tree over here. We've got birch trees. We've got maple trees. We got stone around here, pine trees, and so on. If we walk over to here to this maple tree, we also don't have a recipe in the game for what happens if you use an axe on a maple tree. Obviously, you're going to get some maple logs, so we will add that recipe to start with, but it's a good example of if you were to use this axe on this maple tree, again, we're asking the AI, what do you get when you use this item with all its stats on this tree with all its context information? So we got back maple logs. And again, that gets saved in the game engine. So these stats for maple logs may be different each time you play a little bit. Like this is worth 2 gold, sometimes it's worth 1 gold, it's 3 gold. But that'll be consistent for your whole playthrough. So you're basically discovering all this stuff each time you play. And now that we have the recipe stored in the engine, if you go back and click on any other maple tree with an axe, you'll see that you get more maple logs each time. Those stack in your inventory. If you were to maybe use scissors on the maple tree, we can see what we get there, but you'll probably get something slightly different. You get trimmed maple branches. So it's kind of a very, very quickly expands and gets very, very complex. So you have basically infinite, first of all, infinite items you can craft. So if we were to take our new trimmed maple branches and combine that with, I don't know, a fishing rod, I don't know what that would give. An enhanced fishing rod. So, you're generating all these recipes and items on the fly, and it's all very, very random at the start. It's kind of intuitive what you get for the most part, but once you've generated these recipes the first time, you're building effectively the game as you're going. And so now if you were to talk to an NPC in town and they are like, man, I really love fishing, but my fishing rod just isn't really cutting it. Like the fish here are too big. Do you have an item that might help me? They're never going to ask for a specific item. They're going to give you a description of the problem they're having. And it's up to you as the player to go browse through your recipe book. We haven't set up the recipe book quite yet, but you'll see all the recipes that you've unlocked. And you might go and see like, oh, an enhanced fishing rod might help this guy. So you go look at the recipe of, oh, how do I make that? I need a fishing rod and I need, what was it again? That we got from using scissors on the maple tree. Like maple twigs, I guess. Trimmed maple branches. So you want to give this NPC an item to help them with their problem. You want to give them the enhanced fishing rod. You go look at that recipe, you say, oh, it needs a fishing rod and trimmed maple branches. Okay, I click on trimmed maple branches. How do I get those? Oh, you use scissors on a tree. So then you go collect some scissors, you go find a maple tree, and so on. So it basically, there's lots of steps that you can do for crafting a specific item if you have an idea of how to help an NPC. But also, what I think is fun is just being able to explore around the world and collect a bunch of items. And then once you get kind of a quest, you just have a bunch of items in your inventory and combine them around and see what you get. So if we were to take a chaos tree and we maybe use, I don't know, a sickle on it, or mortar and pestle. Let's use a sickle on a chaos tree and see what we get. I haven't rigged up a lot of the colliders on some of these objects, so maybe we get close enough that way. Okay, cool. So we got chaos leaves. That's cool. We can just collect a bunch of those. Looks like something is off on the hitboxes. We can check in on that, but I'm not too worried about it. We're going to be working on NPCs mostly today. But also, if you use an axe on the chaos tree, you're probably going to get chaos logs, I would guess. Chaos wood logs. Scissors on the chaos tree. What do you get? Mystic fibers. And all of these come with descriptions as well that are generated. So let's see, where's our mystic fibers? These fibers shimmer with chaotic energy, hinting at an extraplanar origin. So all of that, like even the little details like that, they're used by the AI in crafting stuff. So if we were to take maybe a scythe and some mystic fibers that mention extraplanar origin and chaotic energy, we can see what we get there. We got an ethereal scythe with high chaos energy, whatever that means. It's really reliant on what the AI thinks. And we can basically just pass that back in. Maybe we add an acorn to that, see what we get. Like, it's kind of just fun, I think, to just craft these items and see what you get. So we basically added on a moderate nature's blessing and got a Sylvan Reaper scythe, which sounds pretty cool to me. And if we were to maybe mix that with, I don't know, like a hoe, don't know what we get there. But we got Harvest Bane. It's got some bonus to farming on it. So you use a scythe for farming, that kind of makes sense. And you can kind of be collecting all these items, and you might occasionally get items like that where it's kind of like, oh, if a guy in town really has problems with both reaping his crops and having to defend his crops from enemies, this item specifically says it's good for both reaping crops and enemies alike at the end of the description. So that would probably be helpful for that guy. I'd probably drop it off in like a chest, storage chest somewhere in town for myself. Just start collecting a bunch of really niche things. But you also unlock those recipes. So it's not like once you've made the item, you need to hold on to it because you can never get it again. A lot of this stuff will be reproducible. You can go get it. And then it's kind of a progression curve of at the beginning, you're just combining stuff and seeing what you get. And then when you're mastering, like remembering where stuff is in the world and what kinds of items combine into other items and what kinds of items are helpful for what problems, then you get a lot more potential for mastery where you can get a problem from an NPC and say, all right, I think that an item like this will probably help this person, and then you can go craft that specific item instead of it being mostly random. But all that is to say, we have this awesome inventory system, we have this awesome crafting system, we have a interactable objects and tools system, but we don't have NPCs in the game yet. So I've added a prefab over here of this fine little fella. We're going to be adding NPCs to the game this week, and they will function very similarly to the systems demo that we built. Let me bring that up as well. So if you head over to just chromagolem.com or chromagolem.itch.io or wherever. Actually, yeah, we haven't added it to the website quite yet because it's new. So if you head over to chromagolem.itch.io and check out our newest demo here, Elixir Emporium. That's our systems test of all these mechanics. And let me just pull that up real fast. I'll show you what the NPCs will function like. And so that'll be a good example of what we're building this week. So basically in this system, oh hey Anna, welcome to the stream. Showing off what we're about to be building mechanics wise this week, but I'm doing great. How are you? In this demo, we generate some NPCs for this town. So we got Olaf, and Olaf has a personality. He's got a name, he's got a profession, and there's also some description of the location he's in. So what happens is we basically ask an AI like, hey, here's all the information about this person. Here's all the information about the location they're in. Um, what's a problem that they would have in this situation? And so we can see here, we're in a town surrounded by volcanoes. It's very hot. He's got a problem that the volcanoes are drying up the river, and the river is vital for nurturing the herbs. So he needs something to like help irrigate or help water the herbs. And so it's up to you as the player to craft something that might be helpful for that. My day is going great. The stream's going great so far. I just started. It was a pretty slow stream last week because I got bogged down on some inventory stuff, but I've made tons and tons of progress since then, and I'm excited to show it all off. And I'm really excited to get these NPC systems back in the game because they really close the game loop. This was a really fun demo to work on because it is like a full game where you can help people and you can go. We had placeholders for like foraging and stuff that is translating into our actual foraging in the real game now. So it feels like this is the last piece to having like a playable demo again that we can then use as a foundation to add some really cool stuff. And just to close out this description, once you give an NPC an item for their problem that they've described, we again go back to an AI engine under the hood and say, here's the NPC, here's all about them, here's the location they're in, here's their problem, here's the item that the player gave them. Does this solve their problem? And so we kind of branch the logic of the engine a little bit of whether or not the item given to the NPC will solve their problem. And if it does, they reward you. They give you gold and items as tips, so you can use those to craft new items. If it doesn't solve their problem, then they will come back with a new problem that is basically just an exacerbated version of their original problem. It's like getting worse, so you have another opportunity to solve it for them. So it's fun to either see the progression of you've solved their problem and now they have a new problem that's like as a result of the item you gave them originally, or you didn't solve their problem and you get another chance, and then you can scale up that way. I don't stream every day. I actually did stream yesterday. I played Diablo, the original Diablo 1, for like 4.5 hours. It was pretty fun. But I do game development streams every Tuesday. Tuesday at this time, 1 p.m. PST. But I am starting to stream a little bit more. I usually do game developments today, and then on other days I'm usually playing games. Do you stream at all? Or are you more of a watcher? Just love to watch. Awesome. Well, it's nice to have you here. Yeah, it's so hard to find the time to stream. I think all last week, every single day, I was like, I kind of want to stream today, but I don't necessarily have the time to do it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But it always comes down to just time gets away from you. It's such a big time investment for the day. I also feel like I work so much better and faster when I'm not on stream. Like, I got so much done the day after streaming last week, and I was like, why couldn't I have done that on stream? But it is fun to take the weekly stream and kind of show off what I've built and kind of talk through things, get some feedback from people in the chat, get like a vibe check basically. Last week we were working on this inventory system and preparing for like adding tools, so I was building out these AI prompts for like, here's the system for telling the AI, here's the tool the player is using and the item they're using it on. What do you get? So I had Tony and some people in chat giving suggestions for combinations just to see what you get, because it's kind of funky to get those weird combinations. Like if you were to go in and maybe use like a file or a spade on a tree, or a bucket is a good one. If you use a bucket on a maple tree, you end up getting syrup. Oh yeah, definitely. I would love the follow. Thank you very much. Feel free to. Um, I'm happy to have you here. Happy to have you come back too. But it's fun to see. I mean, in kind of the same way, it's fun to just craft items and see what you get. It's also fun to see what you get when you use items on things. Like we use a spade on this tree, we got a sapling for the tree. If we can use a sapling, you can use any item on any object, which is crazy. Thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. I think I have some sort of notification that's supposed to pop up when I get a follow. I don't know if it did or not, but I appreciate the follow. Thank you very much. But if we were to use a maple sapling on a tree, you get maple leaves. Maybe we use needle and thread on a tree. We get fine maple cloth. And you can just basically keep going. We're going to add more and more objects, so you can get a lot more creative in the things that you do. Where am I from? I'm from the USA. I'm over in Oregon. Where are you from? What time is it for you there? Let's head on over to like a birch tree or an oak tree, like different kind of tree, I suppose. And we can just show off that. I mean, we saw using an axe on a maple tree give us maple logs. Obviously, an axe on a birch tree is going to give us birch logs. Theoretically. Oh yeah, we did get birch logs. And you can just keep clicking and getting more birch logs. But if we were to use maybe a bucket on a birch tree, where it's less obvious that you'd get sap or syrup maybe. So we end up getting birch sap, and it's got its own description and so on. I think pretty obvious how it all works, which is nice to be able to understand it well, even when it's such an open-ended system. You're from Florida. Nice. I assume the weather there is probably pretty nice. We are in summer in Oregon right now, which luckily isn't too hot yet, but I'm a big fan of the rain, so this is the time of the year where I'm like, I wish it were the rest of the time of year. More raining, cooler. Weather's perfect. Nice. Glad to hear it. But to get started on some code, I think what I will do is we've got this NPC prefab for what we'll interact with. And I also have the beginnings of like an NPC UI window that we'll probably just use to pop stuff up. And we also have the script for basically a generic interactable world object that we have on all the objects in the world. So what I'll end up doing, I think, is we'll copy this script and modify it more for like a generic interactable NPC, and we'll use that to store the NPC data and also populate the NPC panel when we show it. So we can get started on that. What kind of games do I like to play usually? I'm usually a really big either strategy or RPG fan. So the games I find myself replaying a lot are usually strategy. I play a lot of Dota, Civilization, RimWorld. I really like sandboxy games, so RimWorld, like Kenshi. I used to play a lot of StarCraft. But I also love just digging into a long RPG. I was just playing Yakuza Like a Dragon the last couple weeks. That was really fun. Pretty cool collection, not gonna lie. What kind of games do you normally play? Let's grab our generic interactable world object and rename that. We'll use that as a base. Oops, that's on the wrong workspace. Cool. So this guy, let's call it a generic interactable NPC. You like to play Counter-Strike 2, GTA, and League of Legends. Nice, so a little bit of everything. I'm not usually very good at first-person shooters, so I've got some friends that play Counter-Strike 2, and they love it, but I'm so bad at it. But I do play a little bit of Overwatch, and obviously League of Legends and Dota. I know it's blasphemy to say they're similar, but they're kind of similar. But GTA is super fun. I like the RPG, like open world aspect of it, just going where you want and doing what you want. It's one of those games that you're a pro AWPer. I'm not sure what an AWPer is. Or opper, maybe. One other thing that we will add to our NPC script is a persona scriptable object, I think. I think that's where we want to store all of the data about each NPC. And then our generic interactable NPC will read from that, and it also defines some stuff like our interaction range, but also probably like a generation range, because a lot of the AI stuff that we're going to generate, we don't necessarily want to just immediately start generating when the player enters the world. We want them to have a radius around each NPC where if the player gets near, we can start generating some stuff so it's ready when the player talks to them. But if the player doesn't come near them, there's no point in generating all that stuff. So we'll go ahead and not. But we've copied over this script that we've kind of built for interacting with objects. We're just going to kind of port it over to NPCs as well. So that's also scriptable objects. Let's create one for personas, unless we already have. I think we have the person model from our old systems port over. Let me see if we've got something like that. List person, person database. Yeah, person database defines the person model. Let's go ahead and steal this class. I think we can just rewrite it because we want it to be pretty different. You're also a freelancer. Nice. I did freelance for many, many years. I enjoy the hustle of it. Do you enjoy it? Let's create our persona scriptable object. That's what we'll use to store all our person data. And so we can basically just copy over a lot of the stuff that we had in our person class, but I think it's a little bit clearer naming to just call it persona. I do wonder if we're going to run into any issues with deserializing it, but actually we probably won't be doing NPC generation much in this demo. We did it for the systems demo just to show off like all the different interactions, but I'm thinking with this more fleshed out game, we'll probably have a pretty static cast of NPCs that you're interacting with on the regular, and maybe you can have some more NPCs come later, but I think we don't have to worry about too much about serializing them. So we can use more complex data stuff instead of very, very basic things. I'd love to show some of my work to you if you don't mind. Can I show you my work? We actually have a Discord for game developers and people interested in AI. People are interested in what we're doing. If you wanted to check out in the stream description, down here we've got a Discord link. You can head on over to Discord and you can drop some images of your work there. It's a nice little Discord. We're a small community, but we're growing. But I'll probably check in on the Discord after the stream. I'm gonna focus a little bit on code for a bit. But it would be cool to see what you're working on. What kind of art do you normally do? So I think with our persona, we're going to have, for the most part, we're going to skip over a lot of this, especially the friendship with the player. That was pretty hard coded in. It's kind of a placeholder last time. But with the AI system that we are working with, we also want to basically give these NPCs a little bit more life to live a life on their own. So they're also going to have friendships with each other that can modify by when they have conversations to each other. Very, very complex web there that I'll probably talk about another stream, but we're building the basic NPC stuff now, and then we'll get them interacting with each other maybe next time. You do 3D models, business stuff, and streaming stuff. Nice. Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people that do art for like streaming specifically, and I think 3D modeling is really cool. I use a lot of 3D models, obviously, in game development, but aside from like learning Blender over a month or two, I haven't really worked much with 3D modeling. Let's see if I've got a message real fast. Message request. I see you've joined the Discord, but I don't have any message requests. Or at least none in the last couple days. Did you send it in a DM or on the server? We're going to go ahead and comment most of this out just because we kind of needed it as a template. We're not going to use the same logic for the most of it. Some of it we will, so we'll keep it around, but just to get things compiling and whatnot. Check your pending request. Ah, there we are. Accept. Cool. I've accepted. Let's go ahead and create a couple personas. Let's say Chad the blacksmith is a good one to start with. We'll do Chad blacksmith, and so that gives us a little bit more data to actually work with. So let's go ahead and we know that we need a more long form text for a description for this NPC that we'll be passing along to that AI system. So let's say public string description, and we'll probably end up just doing some dev tools later to be able to like one-click generate some descriptions and stuff, but for the time being we can say Chad is a burly guy who loves hammers and loves making cool weapons even more. So in that description we can go ahead and give NPCs like a personality. We can give them wants and likes. We can give them like things that they really hate or really love. We can flesh that out more as we're using it. But let's go ahead and on our NPC dummy, which is this one, we will add a generic interactable NPC there. And so that is the script that will take the public persona so we'll be able to drag in Chad the blacksmith there. So this NPC has this persona. And let's just kind of work through bringing some of this logic back in. So on mouse enter, we can update our target info bar container. Let's see, what's the target? So it wants a generic interactable world object. I think what we want to do is probably make a base class for both, and or we can make an interface for like a generic interactable entity. Let's go ahead and do that, I suppose. Let's say just dump it in systems for now. We can organize it later. We'll say generic interactable entity. So this class will become the parent class for both of our mono behavior scripts for generic interactables. So generic interactable entity and also generic interactable world object will inherit from that. So now we can update our UI references set target to receive one of those instead. And we will want to define I think what we'll want is, I guess we should make this class abstract, and then we can say string get name. Can we have just fields on abstract classes? I forget. So if we say public string display name. How long have I been working on this game? This 3D version, just a couple weeks now, I think. And then the systems test beforehand we worked on stream for, I think it was a couple months, just to get everything in and polished up. We have been working on a lot of other demos before that, those are all. Oh, I didn't realize the background music was still playing this whole time. We've got a couple more demos. Another big one that people really liked was "You Are Not Alice," which you can play at chromagolem.itch.io. In this one, you're basically playing as a hacker who's taken over somebody's computer, somebody's work computer, and you end up you talk to their coworkers and convince them. I forgot there's a long intro. But the goal of the game is basically talking to this person's coworkers on their version of Slack or whatever, and then you send them the virus file that lets you access their computers as well. So then you can talk to their coworkers and so on. So it was really fun to make. This was one of the bigger like AI-based demos that we made originally. And it's very open-ended, very sandboxy, but it gives you this view of like their computer screen. So you just open up some windows, you see your boss, and you can basically act as if you are this person talking to their boss as them, and then you can browse through people's file systems. That's all generated from AI based on their like job description and some other stuff as well. But all the file contents are generated on the fly as well. So the decrypting thing is actually generating the file contents. But you've got a virus.exe file that once you've warmed people up a little bit in conversation, you can drag it in there to send it to them so they run it. And then you'll be able to switch over to their computer as well. And so you kind of progress through the whole company that way. And each person has kind of a different personality or a different like way they approach their computer security. So you got to take different approaches with each person to try and warm them up to run your virus and trick them. It's pretty fun. So I like it. And there's also some nice little fun tidbits of like you can look through their personal files of like sometimes there's diary entries or like comments on their coworkers, and you can actually send those files to their coworkers as well. And then the AI that powers their coworkers reads those files and talks back and is like, "Hey, you shouldn't talk about Bob that way. He's actually a cool guy." So it was fun to build. I really enjoyed it. We're probably going to go back and work more on it soon. I realized the other day it'd be really fun, like, I mean, the format works really well for mobile, I would say, where you're basically just texting these AIs or using like a mobile Slack. It's kind of nice to have this window-based desktop environment, but it doesn't really need to have that UI. You can do whatever you want. But here's all the people in the company that you can kind of progress your way through. And you read a little bit about them, get some details on them. There's a lot more to do there, but there's never enough time. So we're going to head back. Speaking of never enough time, let's get some of these working. Let's say public string get display name. So here we can say get display name here. We're just basically moving these functions up the chain so they're all coming from this generic parent class instead of the specific like object or NPC class. Let's go ahead and rename these interactable object. And let's keep on going. So now we can set our target info bar data to this interactable object. So let me just double check that that works. We've got no compilation errors, but if we were to hover over this NPC now, well, they probably don't have a collider, I guess, but we should get a sort of tooltip like we do on objects. And I'm also realizing renaming that field might mean I need to go back and okay, I don't need to set the data, I just need to grab it properly. Let's see, generic interactable world object. So down in here we've got object name. And rather than using that, we need to be using get display name. So let's just swap those in real fast. So it's not... this is all for interacting with it and getting the item back. So we still do need to update that tooltip somehow. But let's do this real fast. Yes, so we define this variable here. We are just returning it. What we need to do is actually override this function to return our object name instead. So we say public over, yeah, exactly that. So now in our game we should have the correct object tooltips. Not marked virtual, right, this needs to be virtual. So now we should see, okay, it's back to maple tree and so on. Purple tree, yeah. Okay. Let's close this NPC window and let's take a look at this guy. So he does not have a collider on them, so that's probably why our mouse enter script is not hitting. So let's give him a capsule collider. Edit that collider. We actually want to move it up. Oh, it's not big at all. Let's give it more height. Something like that. That should be fine. I think that should be enough now for... If we hover over this guy, yeah, now we get a generic interactable entity, which we need to do the same thing we just did in the other script, but we know how to do that. So here, we public new, or override, get display name. We return the NPC name instead, and actually the name is on the persona, so we don't want that. We want persona.name, or I don't think we can use name because it will return the name of the object. We want persona name. It'll return the name of the actual file. Let's see here. Cool. So let's double check that that all works as intended, and then we can move on. We go over to this guy. We hover over him, we get Chad. Perfect. I am going to tweak that to, let's say, the blacksmith. So I think that'll be a little nicer. We'll format the tooltips a little bit later. We just want to be able to see what we're interacting with right now. So here, oops. We've got Chad the blacksmith. Perfect. Alright, so let's set up interacting with him when we click on him. So we want a private void on mouse down, and here I think, yeah, that'll all be correct. We need an interact function. public void interact. So that's where we will show the NPC UI window. We will populate it with this persona's data and anything else we would need to do, like play a sound effect from them saying hello, something like that. Let's take a look at, okay, so this needs the same thing. We have it all set up to interact with world objects right now, but we're making it a little bit more generic. So now we want a generic interactable entity, and we'll rename this guy to generic interactable entity. So this queued interaction with needs new type, but now we should, player controller should be set up to move to either an NPC or an object. Really enjoy your stream and the time we spent together in chat. Unfortunately, I have to go for now because I have some ongoing projects. Have a good day. We'll continue our chat. Yeah, have a good day. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate the follow. I appreciate the chat. So hang out anytime. Come back. See ya. In our generic interactable entity, we need another public virtual interact. And let's just say debug.error interacting with base GIE instead of defined overridden class 4, and then we can pop in the game object.name so we can see who needs that set up. A little bit of a nicety for us. So here we override the interact function. We did this, I mean, logically it makes sense that all entities should have an interact function, but we specifically did it because we are calling interact on our queued interaction with object, which is a generic interactable entity from the player class. And so I suppose we also probably need a public float interaction range for the same reason. And we can take that out of both our NPC and our interaction range on the object. This guy needs to be overridden because that's how we've set it up now. So the player controller should now all be set up to interact with entities, so NPCs or objects. The target info bar, which is a bar at the bottom of the screen that shows what you're hovering over, should also be set up to use NPCs or objects. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's get rid of some of these extra files. So now what we want to do is when you interact with an NPC, we want to populate the NPC panel with this persona's data, show the NPC panel to play a sound effect, etc. Anything else we need to do. And then that should be good for now. The interacting with an object had a lot of extra code because we're generating an item, checking recipes, etc. But we're not going to do any of that with the NPCs, so we kill that whole region. And cool, so we are set up already to, if you click on an NPC and you're too far away to interact with them or talk with them, you run over there first and it queues it up to interact with them when you get there, unless you click on something else in the meantime. If you are close enough, you just interact. Let's go ahead and UI references. We can set the public NPC window, or what did we call it? Person window, maybe? NPC window. Oh, it doesn't even have a controller on it. Okay. So we've got an inventory window manager. Let's use the same naming convention of a NPC window manager. So we will have to add that as well. But here we can get a reference to it already, to the NPC window. So let's go ahead and say in the NPC window, NPC window manager, we want a public void load persona. So that's what we will call from here. We'll have our UI references, exactly that. We will show it, which is just setting the game objects to active true. And so that should be good. We also want to make sure that this NPC window manager inherits from a UI window which we built for like a base class for all UI windows. So we have a callback for closing the window and stuff like that. So let's hook that up real fast. This guy, for example, in our control buttons, we have an exit button, which if we add a button component to and give it a on-click callback, we can pass in NPC window dot toggle window open, and obviously the window's open if they're going to be clicking it, so that'll always close it. But now we can go ahead and start setting up our NPC window manager, the references to everything we need. So we will need public text mesh pro of the NPC name. So this label up here will have we might want to style this a little bit more so we know at least what objects we'll be working with. So I think let's do that a little bit. I'm really bad at designing UI and also like functionally working with Unity's UI components, especially like scroll rects. I always get hung up on setting the size of the content in them correctly. So let's not spend a ton of time styling this window, but let's at least get the basic pieces in. So let's head to that guy. So the basic things that we need for showing a window for an NPC. Obviously we've got our tabbed panel down here. We're going to let you talk to this NPC. It'll have some responses auto-generated for you based on the conversation, so you can just click on a response and keep the conversation going. We'll also have a text input, so if you want, you can go ahead and type anything you want to talk to them and steer the conversation however you want, really. We're going to have a trade window, so each NPC will have a inventory, and they might have some biases that adjust the price of items in their inventory. So if you are friends with them and you give them an item, like they might value it a little higher, so you couldn't just buy it back. Or if they have a problem and you give them an item that solves that problem, they're going to value it a little bit higher, or they're going to use it or something like that. If they're a fisherman, they might value their fishing rod higher or their bait higher, but they're not going to value like mountain climbing gear. It might be a little cheaper to buy from them because they're not going to use it. Stuff like that. So we'll have a little bit of interesting shop mechanics where there's not really going to be a generalized shop that you go to like there was in the systems test. It'll be more like there's a lot of NPCs in town. They all have their own inventories. They're all collecting their own items during their profession, and you can go buy or sell items from or to them. So I think that'll be fun, especially when you kind of build in this relationship score with NPCs the more you help them or interact with them. Like if you as a player really like fishing, um, there might be somebody in town who really values fresh fish, like a chef or something. And you as a player basically have a resource to sell those fish to at a higher price than anyone else. So you're getting kind of rewarded for the way that you're choosing to play. And there's also these layered rewards on top of that of like every time you sell them fish, the relationship score goes up a little bit. So their items get a little cheaper. Maybe, not sure what items they would have, but it kind of is a nice gateway into other ways to play that are kind of adjacent to however you're choosing to play. So if you fished a lot of fresh fish and sold them to a chef, maybe you're already collecting a lot of raw food. Maybe if you bought some cooking utensils or appliances or something from the chef, it'd be cheaper than otherwise. So then you can start using the raw food you already have to get more into cooking. And then as you get into cooking, maybe you use that to sell to somebody else in town who throws parties or something and they need a lot of food. So then you can build up a rapport with them, start getting their items, and um, it's very, very open-ended. So it's hard to give like concrete examples without like my natural state is to just keep it as abstract as possible. But I'm trying to give examples here. But I think it'll be really fun. It's so open-ended. You can do kind of whatever you want, and that's really, really hard to code for. But I think it'll be really cool. But back to what we were doing. Setting up this NPC panel, I got a little distracted. We've got the name, we've got their avatar. Let's go ahead and say public image NPC avatar. Yeah, these are all just references to the components. The actual data is still stored in the persona object. So let's actually, in parallel, be also saying here we want a public sprite avatar, or maybe an image. I can't remember. I think it's a sprite though. So now in our info box, what do we want to put there? We probably want to put like their profession, your friendship score with them. I think for now we can just stick the profession up here because I do want to stylize this a lot nicer because I mean that's top of the window, probably what you're going to be relying on at a glance when interacting with this NPC. So we'll leave that as more of a placeholder that we can fill out when we have more specific stuff. But other things that they might have, they're going to have a public list of item. So they've got an inventory. Actually, I think we have an inventory object. Let's use that instead. We also want to give them an amount of gold. So they're going to be making gold when you buy items from them. They're going to be using that gold to buy items from you. So there's a little bit of forced variety there where if you were to constantly just be selling fresh fish to this chef, he might run out of money eventually. We're going to have these NPCs be making money from other NPCs as well, so that there's a little bit of a like refresh type system. But we will just have a gold count. But we don't necessarily, we're not going to do the trade window today, I think. So we don't need to worry too much about these, but we will just have a to-do inventory gold count, etc. Trade window stuff. And that might be good for now. We still need the conversation, which is a question mark on how we want to store it data structure wise. I think I want to take a look at how we structured it before in our systems test. So we had a person database, and in that we had a stranger manager as well. Like a good reason to be refactoring a lot of this. A lot of the old code is pretty funky. Did we have the conversations stored here? I think we had the conversations in like the conversation database, but I'm just double checking. Yeah, it's on the conversation database. So what we did, we had a conversation class, and we had a dictionary of person keys to that conversation on a person. So Bob would have a key for the player, and that would point to his conversation with the player. But Bob could also have a key to Alice, and that would point to Bob's conversation with Alice. Which I think is the same sort of system we want to do now, because we are planning on having these NPCs talk to each other and use a lot of AI in that system as well. So if you're close to two NPCs, you can overhear their conversation and jump in or something. But let's take a look at this conversation class that we've built. And it is just a list of chat messages. So I think that's okay. And we have this index so we can be pre-generating chat messages. So like, I mean, at the very beginning of the game, if you were to walk up to an NPC and click on them, you want them to have an immediate message for you, like, "Hey, welcome to town. Like, I'm the blacksmith here in town. What can I do for you?" So we don't want to be generating that when you click on them, because it takes a few seconds to generate. We'll generate it when you get in a radius of them, and then when you click on them, it'll be ready, and then we show you the message. We increment the messages that we've shown to the player, and then we can go ahead and start generating the next one. So there's always messages ready to show, and we only show the message history up to the point that the player is caught up to. So it's a little bit of predicting the future there. But we can go ahead and we can probably just take this whole conversation database like unedited. It's a message to future me that I don't remember writing. Hi, future me. If you're wondering why this is an infinite loop, it's because the conversation history is nothing but system messages. Oh, right, yeah. It does break if there are no messages in the conversation history other than system messages, because we skip over them in the conversation and go to the next message, but we also clamp to the end of the conversation history. So we'll fix that another time. It's not a worry for future, or it's not a worry for present me. It's a worry for future me. But let's go ahead and take this whole conversation database and bring it into this new game. So I think that is like structurally how we want to store things. We don't necessarily want to have the conversation stored on each NPC, like the actual object itself. We want it stored in these databases that we can persist between scenes, because some NPCs might, disappear from the scene, or if you were to load another scene and come back, we want to make sure that that data persists between scenes, obviously. So putting a centralized database for all that data is a good idea. So we can also set up some prompts here. We have, let's grab this conversation database, bring it down to NPCs databases. And we'll probably also create a folder for prompts for NPCs. So let's make sure we go grab our introduction message for NPCs prompt. which looks like this. Basically just saying some system message to the AI. Your job is to blank. And then we have a templating system of here's all the details about this NPC. So we are pulling from the location database a lot. Let's make sure we're not doing that in the conversation database because we are getting rid of that location database. Okay, we are good to go. So when this new database starts up in the scene, we are creating our conversation history and a bridge conversation history, which this latter one we haven't really implemented yet, but what's going to happen is at the beginning of the game, we're creating our NPC and we're creating a quest or a problem for them. And you can continue talking to them throughout the scope of that problem, like asking questions or just chatting. But what we're going to do is once you've finished that quest, we will have a summary task by the AI to take that full conversation history for that problem and condense it down into one message saying, this is the problem they had, the player was cordial and nice, they gave them this item and it was helpful. And that's just going to help a lot with the long-term context and making sure stuff doesn't fall out of scope. It's also going to help with costs a little bit, so we have fewer tokens to run through the message history each time, but it keeps the history of what happened between the NPC and the player throughout this whole quest, so it can be referred back to in future quests. So if you were to give them like an ice sword to slay a dragon, maybe their next quest is like, yeah, I slayed that dragon and it was so fun, but now I have frostbite. Do you have like ointment for my hands? So we'll probably also come back to this a little bit and implement RAG. We probably will want to store the full conversation history somewhere, but used the abridged conversation history as more of an index into that. So instead of collapsing it into one message and getting rid of the message history that was collapsed, we can at least use that one message as a key and say like, we can use this like multi-step prompt into asking an AI like, hey, here's the history of what happened. Is any of this relevant enough that you want to go get more details about any piece? And then we'll have that way to go back to the full history and pull in what we need there. And that's all very, very fun, new AI tech. And if that sounds interesting or fun on how to implement that, it's called RAG. And if you are to join our Discord, go ping Tony Sprocket, and I'm sure he would love to talk about it. But let's go ahead and let's set up our load persona function, just so we can get stuff going. Let's say NPC name .text. We can set to this kind of same format. We're not going to do anything with the avatar yet. What we will want to load in is load the conversation history. And so that'll be a little bit more involved. So what we're going to do is let's mock up what that conversation looks like in the UI. So we can build some prefabs so we can instantiate those per message, and we can set up our scroll rect, and we can get stuff ready to go. So in our content container, we've got a talk tab content object. In here, let's go ahead and create a UI scroll view, sorry. Design wise, we probably want some space at the bottom for inputting text, but we can deal with that. Let's expand it. Let's just bring it up a little bit. Let's get rid of the horizontal scroll bar and expand horizontal scroll bar, expand into the viewport content. And let's also get rid of the image background. So in the content, what we will want is a conversation message. That'll be our container for the whole message. So we want to style it a little bit. Let's go ahead and size it up to about like this maybe. And then we can have them offset. So player talking on the left side, NPC talking on the right side, or vice versa. I always forget which is which in smartphones and whatnot. But we'll copy that. We're gonna want a background. Let's expand it all the way. Let's find a nice little background sprite that might make sense. It's not bad. Do I want blue or gray? You know what? Let's stick to the basic boy so far. Let's expand that a little bit. It's nice that it has the frame. You know what? We're gonna set the dimensions dynamically based on the text content, so we don't need to worry too much about that. We will probably want. Do we want avatars of the speaker? Maybe not, but we will want maybe like a speaker tag, so we can say Bob. Let's anchor that to the top, expand it across, and maybe center. I think left and vertical center with a little bit of padding. And we probably want to de-emphasize the speaker so the text is focused, but it is there if the player wants to refer to it. Let's scoot it over a little bit more actually. Something like that. Is that too bunched up in the corner? We can always make it look better later. So we've got our speaker tag. Let's go ahead and also add spoken text. Hi, I'm a really long message that probably wraps over multiple lines, and that's cool. Cool, so this guy also needs to expand the whole thing, but come down and have the same padding on the left and right. So left is 14.4 pixels. We want it also on the right. And let's go ahead and do it on the bottom as well. So that will be fine. Auto sizing with a Text Mesh Pro object is probably fine. I forget. I mean, we can auto size the text, obviously, but I want the message itself to expand like this when the text is longer. So I think what we'll end up doing is putting a content formatter or a content size fitter on this guy with a min size. With something. How does one do this? You know, maybe that's something we can come back to. But we can get this to expand when we have text that's longer and get shorter. Obviously, I mean, it's just a text interface, really. And then we will have like multiple conversation messages in the conversation with the players maybe over here, and it goes back and forth like this. So you'll be able to scroll back up, see history. We might have some events in here of like add a little notice of when you gave them an item, or maybe when you bought an item from them, or sold an item to them, or something else. But this is a good start for the conversation, which is we're going to add in. Really, all this today is just to get them generating their first quest, and then we want to be able to go click on them and open up the window that shows them talking to say their first quest. But this is looking good. Let's go ahead and remove the content size fitter until we know how to work with it. But we will need now a vertical layout group where we will need to think about how we want to offset messages, but we can set up our padding, maybe 20 and 20. It's probably a little too compact. That's looking a little better. And then maybe something like this, and then we'll just map our top and bottom, left and right to be the same. Child alignment, we do want, I think we want upper left, but we could work with upper center. It might be easier to offset things. Let's do upper left for now. But now when we add more messages to it, it should ideally expand this content size and should let us scroll. So let's play the game. Let's just make sure that everything is set up to scroll. It is not, obviously, and so maybe one of them not in the parent. But let's figure out what the dealio is there. Oh, a lot of them are not in the parent. So maybe the height wasn't even long enough to scroll. Let's double check. Oops. Let's see. Let's do this. Doesn't scroll. That's fine. A little sus. Let's go ahead and so we don't have any compilation errors. It was a little weird that it looked like it was using the previous structure. So if we bring this up and we scroll it, okay, they are still all in the content. It doesn't scroll that way, so maybe content needs content size fitter. One sec. I think that button muted my mic. So here, if we look at the content, if we set our vertical fit to preferred size, now it looks like it's going to scroll correctly. What does min size look like? Let's try that one. That sounds more reasonable. But here, should get scrolling. Cool, we do. We want to remove the horizontal scroll, but things are looking good. We got space for the player's responses. Cool. So how do we remove this horizontal scroll? We uncheck a box. Cool. Let's go ahead on our conversation message. Let's set a conversation message controller script to it. And for now, that'll just load in some text, but later that'll let us add in like tooltips and other ways to interact with messages. But it's just a nice little interface for us for now. Let's say this guy has public text mesh pro UGI speaker tech. So we've got our two references, and we can just have a set message. Yeah, that's fine. So let's go ahead and set those references. So speaker tag becomes a speaker label. Spoken text is the message label. We can now set it as a prefab in our NPCs system. Say conversation message. Let's call it a UI conversation message. I'm still learning how to best organize everything. I'm trying out this new systems approach rather than having like a top level prefabs, scripts, models, etc. I'm kind of separating everything out into the systems and then having those top level folders in that system. So it's been a lot nicer so far. I've already seen though a couple places where it kind of breaks down, like our base UI window component, that multiple systems have UI windows that inherit from that. Like, it's a little weird to just make a UI system that things depend on, but I'm sure it'll make more sense later when we start adding like assemblies for these and we can explicitly say this system depends on this system and so on. So where was I? We've got our messages. We can add messages to this guy. So we now have a script to set that message content in our NPC window manager script. That's where we're going to also need a reference to the talk tab content where we will be adding those instantiated prefabs. Game object, conversation, content, container. So let's make a function for that. Say redraw conversation history. Let's store what persona we're showing. So when we redraw it, we want to destroy all children that already exist there. And then we want to, public game object prefab, what did we call it? Conversation message. So now we create a conversation message for each message in the conversation history. I think we need to store we're not storing the conversation message in the persona. We're grabbing it from the conversation database. Which I guess is a little bit different in structure than I was thinking it was, because the dictionary of person to conversation, I was thinking from the reference of each NPC would have an instance of this dictionary. So Bob's dictionary, if the person was the player, it'd be Bob's conversation with the player. Or if the person was Alice, it'd be Bob's conversation with Alice. But if we have this singleton conversation database, it's going to be more from the player's perspective to everyone. So the conversation history with key Bob is the player's conversation with Bob, and the key Alice is the player's conversation with Alice. Do we want to change that now is the question, or is that something we want to come back to? Because it is something we want eventually. The question is kind of, it's a balance between how hard it would be to gut this system and replace it later versus we don't really know how we want NPCs to interact with each other now. So there's a big chance that we might need to gut it anyway because we tried to plan ahead too far and didn't know how things would interact, and we need to gut it anyway. So it might make sense to just do it later. And if we can build out the like proper getters for get conversation between player and Bob, then we can swap out the underlying data structures pretty easily, I'd say. So I think what we'll do for now is just keep this structure and assume that all conversations are from the point of view of the player, and the key in the dictionary is the player talking to who. So what we will do is, let's say, what functions have we got here? Alright, let's add a public conversation, get conversation between. We don't really have a persona for the player per se, although maybe we should have one, because they will have a lot of the same like avatar and name and inventory and gold count. I think we can skip that for now though. Let's go ahead and let's just do this, and let's write ourselves a note of, for now, this function returns the conversation between the player and the given NPC, but in the future it to living entities, player or NPC, or two NPCs, etc. So this is more of just like an interface that lets us come back and make that change later a little easier, rather than doing this wherever we need the conversation. So here we can say conversation and it's using person. Ooh, yeah, we want to change all these from person to persona because we don't want to use person anymore. Let's double check that there's nothing here that we needed. I don't think so. So let's do all those changes real fast. Persona, 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 persona. And we'll double check all the logic here as we go through it, but should be mostly the same. I mean, we made our persona from our person class. So this will give us the conversation between the player and this NPC's persona. So if we click on Bob, we get a conversation with Bob, etc. So now we can say if there's a conversation, we go through each message in the message history and we instantiate that message in our prefab conversation message object. We probably only want to do that if the message dot role is equal to or not equal to system, because we want to include both user and assistant. User is messages from the player, assistant is messages from the NPC. But we don't want to show those internal system messages that we use to pass around game state and stuff. Okay. So let's make sure that this is set up. It is. So here we should, I mean, the conversations are going to be empty for now, but this should be everything to draw a base conversation into the window. Let's see what our, yeah, we changed everything from using person to persona. So in, for example, our stranger manager and other systems that we brought over just as reference, but we're not using anymore, we're going to have a lot of errors. So let's go ahead and just comment those out. I want to leave all this code around because it's nice to be able to reference all this code from our systems test. While we basically rewrite most of it in a much nicer way. Okay, location database, yada yada yada. Person UI manager. I mean, I guess we could have just like jankily created a implicit conversion in the person class to convert it to a persona and skip fixing all these errors, but it's whatever. Let's just comment everything out. That's how you fix code, right? Works for tests. One more. Oh, missed you. Okay, so everything should compile now, and should work theoretically. Except we don't have, I mean, a conversation, obviously. So what we want to do, let's clean up our editor a little bit, and let's get that initial conversation going. So let's just go ahead and say, in our conversation database, is that what we called it? Conversation database? Yeah. At the start, let's go ahead and say, create some test data for a conversation between test NPC and the player. So let's go ahead and public persona test NPC. We'll set that to Bob, and then we can say conversation history.add that new conversation. Do we have a nice constructor for anything here? No, we're just, I see. Okay, let's add some helpers here too. Say public void add message. So we can now say conversation history. Wow, okay. Let's add one from the user. Hi Bob. I'm new here. Where are all the fish? And then once more from the assistant, hate fish. Okay, that's a nice long message too. So we should now have a conversation between the player and conversation database and Bob, which we will now set here. NPCs, or Chad, sorry. So when the conversation database gets initialized, we're creating a message from Chad. And then we can click on Chad and it should populate our window with these three messages, theoretically. Should clear this out. Let's go ahead and populate that just in case we need it later. Let's close our NPC window and let's just cross our fingers, go click on him and see if we get any errors. No errors so far, which is honestly a little surprising. So we got Chad the blacksmith here. If we click on him, nothing happens. Okay, we can work with that. Let's go back to our generic interactable NPC class. On mouse down, we see that we are not getting any of the mouse clicked on events. So either this is returning early or the collider is not set up and on mouse down is not triggering. So what we're gonna do is let's just add a debug.log here. Mouse clicky clicky. I guess we should add the game object name in there. And let's also double check that he has a collider on him. He's got a capsule collider. Doesn't need to be a trigger. And he does have the interactable NPC script on him. Okay. So let's see if that gets called. I mean, that would be nice if it did, because then we know what the error is, but I'm sure that's not it. So mouse entered, mouse clicky clicky. Okay. So we are actually... I bet what's happening is we have this to don't do anything if you're currently clicking on a UI component. And the tooltip that appears under your mouse is a UI component. Which is probably why it was so janky to interact with these objects over here as well. Unless I move my cursor and click before the UI component gets to me. So what we're going to do there is turn off raycasting on our tooltip. Interactable objects, prefabs. If we can ever find our tooltip. Item tooltip? No, that's not it. Well, I guess let's just look. UI references, set target, show mouse info tooltip, set mouse, position to mouse, mouse info tooltip container is a reference to what? This is on target info bar controller, which is in the HUD canvas. Target info bar. Mouse tooltip. It's not even a prefab. Okay. So this guy, disable raycast target. And let's make sure there's no raycast target on the text. Extra settings, raycast target, no. Okay. I'm guessing that that was what happened there. Let's turn this guy back off. Let's go back in. So now, when we click on Chad the Blacksmith, when we shoot a raycast from our camera to where the cursor is, it'll not hit the tooltip and therefore not hit a UI component. It'll keep going and hit the NPC. It worked. Well, maybe worked. We did get the clicky, but something's not set. Okay, we can work with that. The UI references NPC window reference is not set, which is fine. UI NPC window. All right, let's try again. We go a little bit further this time. We click on Chad the Blacksmith. Okay, load persona. NPC name on the NPC window manager. I bet we didn't set those references either. NPC window, yeah, none of this is set. Okay. We can do that as well. We've got avatar. Probably want to make that shown persona private actually, but that's fine. We've got, let's open this up so we can see what we're working with. Window title. Let's do it this way. Header text, okay. Let's put that in for our NPC name. The conversation content container is there. And let's grab our new prefab for a UI conversation message there. We will keep this train rolling, as the kids say. But we gotta close that first. We click on Chad the Blacksmith and okay. I mean, that works. We still need to get the messages to expand their height for long messages. We want to update the speaker tag to be correct. And we want to offset those messages. And we also want to be able to let the player respond back. So setting those speaker tags is super simple. Let's do that first, and then maybe we can try again, see if we can get them expanding, but I think we should move on pretty quickly to letting the player respond and talk more to the NPC, because that's the cool part. Cool. So in set message, what we're gonna do is just string formatted speaker name is equal to, how do we want to do this? Let's do this, and then we'll say switch. We have user, assistant, and system. I guess U is fine for that. We want to use the NPC name here, so maybe we pass that in instead. We do this a little bit higher up. So where we call this here, we actually want to sub in the persona name here. So let's say string formatted speaker. Perfect. And system can say stay system. So we'll use formatted speaker. So that should update that. Let's go take another look at our conversation message. Let's make it even longer. And then, so the thing with using a content fitter is that this doesn't actually expand the height on the child object when it wraps. Is there a Text Mesh Pro like setting for expanding the dimensions? I'm not sure. We can ellipses it, overflow. I want like expand, truncate. Page? No. Oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, not what we want, but that is cool. Let's do overflow, and then maybe we can put a content size fitter on this guy. Vertical fit of min size. Preferred size. Okay, we're getting something there. We do need to anchor it correctly, though. Like, how do we want to do this? Let's make a stack. We put both of those guys in there. The stack expands the whole thing. The speaker tag expands top and across. And then this guy expands to the whole thing. And then stack, we have a vertical layout group where we control the width, but not the height. And then this guy is going to complain because it has a parent vertical layout group, but it's not controlling the height. So it is adjusting correctly. The stack, we now want a content size fitter on as well, so we can get that expanding. And then this guy, content size fitter, should, well, let's put some padding on this guy first of all. We want to get this guy expanding to the child contents, which is this, and also the background. Let's remove the background real fast. So if we do a vertical fit here, it's got a height of 0. Okay. Is its parent a... Its parent is a vertical layout group. Wow, you have no dimensions. Okay, let's do 100 there. Get back to looking at it. Okay, so this is what we want to match the height of its child objects. There should be a content size fitter then, but it's not. Let's see. What can we do here? This is what I mean about being pretty bad at Unity's UI components. Just trying to get the UI to do what I want it to do. Let's just not worry about it for now, maybe. this is fine for now. More importantly, let's get player able to talk back. But let's press play. I should have closed the window. But should be able to close it and then open it up with Chad's data. Okay. So yeah, as soon as it expands correctly, it should look a lot better. We still gotta do the offsetting, but it's important that we get the actual functionality in first. Okay. So in order to do that, how do we want to do that? In the systems demo, we didn't have any conversation at all. We just had them present their quest to you, and you drag in an item to help them. But in our previous two demos, our horror game and also You Are Not Alice, we did have pretty robust conversation systems. So we can let's open up You Are Not Alice and take a look at, well, no, we don't need to do that. We can just get it working. And I see we got a couple more people in the stream. Welcome. Thanks for joining. We're working on our crafting game. It's called Elixir Emporium. It uses a lot of AI stuff in the engine to power some like crafting recipes and item generation and quest generation, stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, just hit me up in chat and I'll show you around, answer questions, whatever. We had a systems demo a couple weeks ago that we put out and people liked it, so we are porting it over into a big 3D world now. So yeah, happy to show you around. Let's go ahead and we can add a player response controller or container to our vertical stack. So we'll get it expanding all the way. And in here we can have a container for canned responses that the player can just click and carry the conversation on. And let's expand that guy. We'll also have a what do we want to call it? Like a open-ended response container. And we'll expand that guy as well. And in here we'll have our handy dandy text mesh pro message input. We can expand that guy yet again. We make this guy editable, if I remember how to do that. Rich text. Or was it actually a separate UI component? Input field, right, that's the one I want. Message input. So this is the guy we want to stretch out. Okay. So we'll have this set up to where the player can type whatever they want in here. They can press enter, or maybe we have a little send button or something. And it'll add it to the conversation history, and then we'll prompt the AI saying, here's the new full conversation, generate your response. So let's hook up some sort of trigger for that on pressing enter on our message input. Okay, let's make this font just a little bit bigger to match our font above, but actually we probably want to make our font above a little smaller. So let's do like 22 on, 28 on this guy, and then like 22 on the text. It might be too small to look like full screen. I think that's fine. I mean, it's a little small. Let's bump them up to 32. But here we'll also bump this up to 32 as well to match. Or I guess on this guy. Make him a little bit larger. It's fine. And I forget how we add, yeah, on value changed, I believe, is every time you press a button, which we don't want. We want like on submit. Let me just find where that is. This is a Text Mesh Pro input field. Oh, right. I remember it calls on submit when you press escape too. Let's see. We might just add it through the code, which is fine. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. So what we'll end up doing in our NPC window manager, we are going to need to restructure things a little bit because we have our conversation content container. We're killing all the child objects in that. So we actually, let's do a messages container here. Let's put it up yonder. Let's put our message in that. And this guy, we are going to need a content size fitter on him as well, I think. So if we put a bunch of guys in here, yeah, rather than the vertical layout group 30s and 10, we want that on this guy. And that's some weird dimensions. A little suspicious. I think we just need to set the pivot correctly. And then we can have our player response container set to be at the bottom of the content, which has a height of 0. Well, that ain't right. And I guess we can pull it out and put it like on the viewport itself. Put it at the bottom down there. And then our content would just overlap it. Because yeah, we probably wouldn't want this actually scrolling. Maybe we even bring it further up. And let's disable this world that's in the way here. But if we go ahead and take this guy, where'd you go? Player response container. Need to actually have the correct dimensions on it. Open-ended, canned response, message input. We anchor that to the bottom with just a little bit of offset like that. Maybe even just, let's do more. Yeah, that seems fine. If we then, we can adjust this a little bit more when we have canned responses in. But now we should get a nice text bar or text input at the bottom and also be able to scroll this thing. We need to adjust the content size fitter on that though, but we can at least type and it doesn't scroll along with the thing. So let's go ahead and get our content fit correctly again. Our messages container has a height of a lot. So why doesn't it scroll? What's our viewport size? Okay, scroll view. Okay. If we did a min size, we still have the same height. Let's put more messages in so the height is more obvious. No scroll bar on that. If we remove the content size fitter, height is a lot. Will it automatically update? Probably not. But this should let us, oh, it doesn't even let us scroll in. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Let's re-add our content size fitter with a vertical fit of preferred size. Each of these guys are adding to that height. You know, that should let us scroll, I don't know. Let's see. Let's do a min size actually. That component, I'm pretty sure, sets the size, either horizontal or vertical, of this parent object to the combined size of all of the children objects. So we have our vertical layout group, which automatically expands each of these as we add more, which adds to the height. And so the container should be incorporating that combined height into its new vertical fit. So if we set this height manually and it doesn't let us scroll, that means the viewport height is, yeah, like the content. So this is now setting its height based on the child height. So let's get rid of that. And so now the viewport won't be expanding and therefore not scrolling. So now it all works perfectly as we expect it to. I think we actually do want the content size fitter on that. But, you know, now that we've pulled out the player input outside of the content, the scrolling content, we can just revert back to what we had. Put this, let's see, vertical layout group, paste values. All of these guys can go back on that. And this guy can have content size fitter, vertical fit, preferred size, I think. Get rid of this. And it's the viewport that it's masking it, so it should. I say it should. It definitely will work this time. As expected. Easy peas. Alrighty, so with that done, we close our eyes and never touch that again. And now let's go ahead and set up our callback that runs when we press enter on the player input. This guy. So we will set that up in the NPC window manager. We're going to be setting it up. Let's grab that code for it. We just do an on submit listener on actually submitted. TextMesh Pro does this brilliant thing when it triggers the on submit event both when you press enter and also when you press escape to cancel. If you subscribe to the event using the extension method instead, your callback will only be fired when the input field is actually submitted. Okay. I don't really care too much about that. Escape seems fine to me. So what we're gonna do is let's add a reference to TMP input field, player input open-ended, and then void start. Let's make this private actually while we're here, but we will say add an on submit callback for the player input field. Let's go ahead and create that. Okay. I was gonna say I don't know the parameters it takes, but apparently it knew what I wanted. So little doesn't look quite right, passing it as a anonymous delegate like that. Let's take another look at this real fast. Yeah, we should just be able to pass in the function name. So it might have generated that based on it having the wrong parameters. Let's do this, see if it errors. If it does, yeah, so let's get rid of this. We generate this function. Let's see what AI does for us. String input, yeah, instead of arg0. Okay, we can use that. So what we will do is we get the conversation between the player and whatever persona is being shown in this window. We add a message from the user, which is the player. This is the message. We clear the input field. We redraw the conversation history with the player's new message. And then we trigger the NPC's response. And that we will need another prompt, which I think we'll add to the conversation database. Let's say public prompt respond, to conversation. So here we can say, let's create our callback first of public void got response to current conversation with a string response, which is the structure that we use for interacting with the LLM. It's always a void function that takes a string as the generated text. So we say conversation database dot instance dot prompt respond to conversation dot coroutine, and for that we pass got response to current conversation, and this will give us back the coroutine that will generate a response and then call this callback when it's done. So we still need to start coroutine for this. And then when we have a generated response from the NPC, it'll trigger this function with that response preloaded. And we can go ahead and say conversation, or let's say, how do we want to do this? Let's grab the conversation again. We add a message from the assistant with this response, and then we redraw the conversation history. And one thing that I'm liking more is this sort of anonymous calling, just to make it a little bit more explicit of like what's going on with this line. Cool. So this has a slight like edge case race condition type thing of you can send multiple messages all at once and the NPC will respond to each one in turn, just whenever the response is generated. So we probably should polish it up a little bit to like check and see if there's an existing coroutine and stop it, and if there is, generate a new one when we get a new message, but I think it doesn't super matter. Okay. This should be fine, I believe. What we do need to do, actually, we need to serialize the conversation and insert it into this prompt, because otherwise, how is the prompt going to know about the current conversation? So let's do that. And then I think conversation should work, and then we'll see where we're at then. But we might have fully conversational NPCs at that point, and we can then work on quests generation for them, or we could add a bunch more NPCs, or whatever we want to do, really. So let's actually say private void generate NPC response to current conversation. We use this as a helper. Put that at the end, kind of, but generate that. And so what we're going to actually do is, instead of just using this prompt, we will create a new prompt of conversation database dot instance prompt respond to conversation dot fill prompt with replacements, new dictionary, and then that'll let us pass in tokens and the actual prompt response. I remember that we have in conversation a serialized formatted log, which is really nice that we can just use. It serializes it into this format. So we'll just want to make sure that we are stripping out assistant, or mentioning it in the prompt at least, in the system prompt, to not have those tags in. But we can go ahead and start on our prompt for that. So let's say create chromagolem prompt, respond to conversation as NPC, and let's write ourselves a nice perfect on the first try system message. I'll hit you with some ASMR. That should do it. So now we can take these tokens that we set up. We have NPC name. We have NPC profession. We have NPC personality, which I don't think we have set a field for yet. What's wrong with my syntax here? Oh, right. I think it's actually something like this. I feel like I'm such a slow typer on stream because I actually have my mic basically blocking my keyboard. My keyboard is not where I usually have it. I normally type much faster than this, I promise. Let's see here. Oh, right, and the commas. So we've got these tokens, and then we also have our conversation history, which we will set in a second, but that'll do. When we have all that filled out, instead of doing this, we can get the generation coroutine for the filled out prompt instead. Let's say conversation, current conversation is equal to that. So now we can say current conversation dot serialized formatted log, which should make our nice formatted conversation. Let's go add a field to persona for personality. Description is probably what we should use instead. So let's just rename that. And so now you can say shown persona dot personality. And that should be what we need. When we have the conversation, it's all printed out. We have this text input, so players can type whatever they want to respond. When they press enter or escape on that, we hit on player input submitted. We add it to the conversation history. We redraw the conversation history so it gets added as a window up here or a message up there. We generate an NPC response to that conversation by filling in details about the NPC and the conversation history so far. We start that coroutine to kick off that LLM in the background. When we get a response back, fetch that current conversation, add it in, and redraw. So that should be everything we need. Let's test it, I guess. I hope it works. Let's go ahead and toggle our world back on so we can talk to a real NPC instead of this fake window. Let's turn off our NPC window so we make sure it initializes correctly when we open it. Let's head on over to Chad the blacksmith and see what errors we get inevitably. Alright, Chad the blacksmith. You're Chad, yeah, I know you still need to update the expanding of those message boxes, but if you know what, we never hooked up the on no, we did add the on submit. Yeah, we did. Okay, cool. So let's say, what's your name? Silly little message. On submit is not firing, or we have an error here. Oh, we didn't link up the player open-ended text box. All right, let's link that. NPC window, player open-ended text box is this guy, or actually this guy. So we have all the references now. Let's give that another shot. All right, Chad, don't let me down. What's your name? Enter? Okay. What's your name? Enter? No reference except... Oh, we also didn't set this reference, I bet. Prompt respond to conversation, the prompt we just created. Let's go to the conversation database. Yeah, it's not set. Alright, so respond to conversation as NPC goes there. Let's double check that everything else is set. Let's see. Conversation database looks good. Our person database is still empty, which is good. And our NPC dummy has Chad's persona. We don't need that display name anymore. Let's actually remove that real fast. So since that is grabbed from the entity. Yeah, it's fine. Alright, let's try that again. Alright, Chad. I know you want to error here. What color is the sky? Okay, I see we're getting some output. The sky is usually clear blue. I mean, it is pretty clear blue. Why do you ask? Helps me see the metal's true color while I'm working. Yeah, he's incorporating that he's a blacksmith. Okay, I mean, it seems like it works. We still need to get the text expanding correctly to show it properly in the UI, but the hard part is done. I actually believe it's red. And does it scroll? It does scroll, but very slowly. We can update that real fast. Everyone's got their perspective. It's just, unless it starts raining fish, the color of the sky doesn't matter much to me. Do you have any fish for sale? We'll set up his trade tab later, but this is looking good. So we'll use this to generate his quest. So you'll be able to get his quest from him. So he will describe like the problem that he's having. He's not going to ask for a specific item, but you'll be able to now ask him some clarifying questions of like, do you think this would help? Or like, what do you not like about this, blah, blah, blah. Can't stand those slippery things. Even if I had them, I'd sooner toss them back to a dry river than sell them. So that's also a good example of like, if he did happen to have fish, the personal biases that affect the cost of items in his inventory, he'd probably sell you some fish real cheap. Okay, so that all works. And works pretty well. See how well it handles some gibberish, I guess, but we can get the quest generation back in now. So, not sure what you're trying to sell or say there. If it's about forging or metals, I'm all ears. We got some cryptic way to cool off my hands. I'm listening. So, okay, that's fine. We also really just gave him placeholder personality, so he's not very flavorful right now, but you know, it works. Let's check that in real fast. Let's say get interactable NPCs with dialogue and open-ended player messages working. It's a lot of changes because I was reorganizing the file structure before the stream. But that works. That's cool. So let's go ahead and let's add a like preparation radius around this NPC, so we're not just automatically generating stuff as soon as we load into this world and there's tons of NPCs and they're all generating messages. We want to wait until we as a player are close enough to them. And let's also start adding back in that quest generation that we had in our systems test. So now we can get him to introduce himself in his first message, but also we generate a problem he's having. Basically, we tell this AI engine under the hood, like, here's your NPC that you're looking at, here's the location they're in, here's their profession, here's some stuff going on in the world, like what's a problem that NPC would be having here. And so we can get his quest set up that way. Let's go ahead and remove our temporary conversation that we had to set stuff up. And then let's think about where we want to store this quest information. Probably either on the persona or in like a quest database. And I'm thinking probably a quest database. So let's go ahead and let's create one of those real fast. I think I have a script that I started on, but haven't actually implemented anything yet. We've got some prompts set up for different difficulties. We have a dictionary so we can get an active quest for each person, and we can just set and fetch those. Let's go ahead and grab those prompts from our old system, which, let's grab that whole folder. Let's bring it down to a new system we can set up for quests. And then in our quest database, let's say easy quest is the direct problem when they're like, hey, my fields are all drying out. I need water or something to help irrigate them. And then we also have medium quests set up for more open-ended ones of like, my fields are all drying out and I can't grow the crops I need. How are you going to help me? And we also have follow-up quests for the next quest that you do. If the previous one, you helped them, then you gave them a certain thing, he's going to generate a follow-up quest based on like how things have been going using that specific item. And if you weren't able to help him, he's going to generate a follow-up quest where it's basically the previous quest, but like higher stakes, exacerbated type thing. Like his fields are now completely dead and he can't feed his family. Do you have any food? So some of this is still using our old like location generation system, which we're getting rid of in favor of this nice 3D world we're building instead of generating new places on the fly every time. So we will remove some of that, but we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to say on our interactable NPC, let's set a public, let's not worry with the like generation radius quite yet. We only have one guy in the world right now. We can just go ahead and stick this into start for now and say when the game starts we can start generating his quest. But we will say just thinking through, like, does it make sense to do quest generation from the generic interactable NPC class, or should we stick that in the persona? Probably here, I think. But let's say public void generate quest for persona. And we did have that person class. We're going to go ahead and switch these over to using persona instead of person. We're phasing person out. Let's go ahead and comment out all this other stuff that we're basically just going to rewrite here. So actually, let's steal some of that. Generate quest for is going to be basically generate new NPC quest for. So we have some like spaghetti code over here. What we've been doing is cleaning it up as we go, rewriting it, making it a lot more extendable. The systems test was really just a quick and dirty, like, is this fun? Glad the answer was yes. But I think we can, like, things like this where we added it in, and I can't remember if it was for a reason or just being safe. I'm going to err on the side of being unsafe so we can get those errors and find those errors and really make sure the code is as clean as can be instead of trying to cover everything from the get-go. But what we're going to do is let's take a look at, all right, so this returns whether a quest has been previously generated for a person or if this is the first quest. That's what determines whether we are showing or using the easy quest or the follow-up quest or the medium quest difficulties. So let's go ahead and let's copy this over real fast. So our prompt base is just a placeholder. So if this persona has had a quest generated in the past, we will be using the prompt that we've set up here, which says like, here's a summary of the previous quest, here's what the player did, here's whether it solved your problem or not, and so on. Generate a new quest. Otherwise, we are going to generate that first starter quest. And I think for now, we're just going to stick to the... Let's just do the open-ended quests. We can always add in those easy quests again later. But I really, really like the open-ended quests that are just kind of like, yeah, I mean, bears keep coming and killing all my sheep. Sucks. Versus the guys that are like, yeah, bears keep coming and killing my sheep. Do you have something that can help set up defense turrets? So I like the open-ended ones because for all these quests, there's no like solution they're looking for. It's all determined under the hood of kind of this AI engine of here's the quest, here's the item, does it solve the quest? So the open-ended ones I think are a lot more fun, but obviously when a player first starts, they're going to want the easier ones to try and wean into the system a little bit more. But let's go ahead and we're not going to use this block, but I do want to bring it over for when we bring the easy quests back, because they're the ones that look at your specific inventory and say like, oh yeah, you have an axe in your inventory, like I really need something to help me chop all this wood. If somebody had something that would help with that, that'd be great. But I think that's a little too easy. Let's go ahead and when we have our prompt base, we will fill it out with data from the game. So we've got our NPCs, name and profession. This is now NPC name, I think, or persona name. We're going to strip out the location information. I think we'll just bake that into the prompt itself. And we're going to strip out the items in inventory as well. Do we need the conversation history? I don't think so. We're going to be using the summarized conversation history when we do the follow-up quests, because we want to condense that full conversation history for a single quest down to a single message, so we can use that as history and context in follow-up quests. But let's just get the regular quests working for now. And let's go, the medium quest is what we're using. Let's modify this prompt a little bit to make sure we're not relying on the location. Following instructions for the following NPC, name the profession. We can get rid of that. You're an NPC. You've already introduced yourself and described the location. Let's cut that. Basically, we're just cutting out all the references to location stuff, because in the systems demo, you could travel around to different locations. Let's reformat this a little bit to just something like this, a little bit nicer, so we can also include some other information later, personality. Cool, so let's actually also add personality here, and we will pull that from the persona as well in the same way. And that should set us up. Let's go ahead. I know there's a lot of arrows over here just because we switched person to persona. There'll be more we're commenting out. But let's finish this up. We now have a prompt that we can use that includes the game state for this NPC and the system prompt of go generate a quest for them. We need to start the coroutine for that prompt, and we need that basically. Basically, the coroutine will kick off the LLM. The LLM will generate text. The text gets passed as a parameter back to our callback, which is defined here. So generated quest will be the output. Set quest for, we'll set it for this person. We do want to make sure that their response is like dialogue and not just Wikipedia style of this person needs this. But we'll test that, I guess. But this will set a current quest for this NPC, and we're not just we have this separated out instead of just adding it directly to the conversation, because now that the player can talk to the NPC more, it becomes a lot harder to tell which exact message in the conversation is the quest. So we're setting the quest and also adding the quest to the conversation history. So we want to do that as well. So we want assistant as our role because it's a message from the NPC. And quest details, let's double check that this does what we want. Yes, and instantiates a new conversation if it's empty and then adds it to the end. Cool. Alrighty, so that should now, when we load the game, in the, where do we kick this off from? I feel like I did just add a start function somewhere for this. I'm going to comment out this whole function. A little weird that I'm still getting syntax highlighting on some of this. Wondering if we have... Okay, it's fine. Right. In our quest database, conversation database perhaps, somewhere we literally just added a start method that calls generating a quest for an NPC. I have forgotten exactly where that is. I guess we can go look at what calls. Okay, we apparently are not. That's fine. Alright, we'll add it to the let's add it to the generic interactable NPC. So here we can say when the game starts, we want the quest database to generate a quest for this NPC. And then when that quest is generated, it will add that message to the conversation. So if this all works, which I will kind of be surprised if it does, but maybe it will, then we should be able to start the game, generate a quest, wait a second, and then open the conversation. and it should have that message. So let's go ahead and just comment out these other errors from the old code that we are porting over. I was not diligent in my replacements correctly, so it's fine. None of this code actually gets run. It's just in the project, and we modified some of the interfaces. So let's start this. Let's see if we get an error. First of all, no errors. Okay, we see in the log, we are generating a response to Chad. A little weird that they all have ampersands on them. But I guess that's fine. We'll look at that in a sec. We got a response back. Good day, kind alchemist. Okay, so we should have a message from Chad if we open up this message. Alright, we do. It doesn't scale well, but we have one. Good day, kind alchemist. I find myself in a peculiar and troubling situation whenever I start working on my forge in my smithy. The metals I touch begin to sing. Not just any melody, but tunes that enchant me to the point of distraction. This musical melody makes it impossible for me to concentrate on my work. It's driving a wedge between me and my craft. Can you help a fellow craftsman out? So here is the point where, in the previous systems test, you as a player would now run off and say, alright, I have all these items. I can go craft items, see if I can get anything, and then you give that item to this NPC, and it says, does this item solve this quest? Yes or no? Now, in this new system, you can craft these items. You can also run around in the world and go collect items, both by basically by using any item on any object. So if we use an axe on a maple tree, we gotta fix our colliders. I don't know where to click. But if we use an axe on a maple tree, we get maple logs. If we use a hammer on a maple tree, you get like maple bark or something. So you get a lot more variety in the items you can go collect, and then you have a huge variety of items you can craft from. And then in the previous version, you would just go back and really hope that the oak leaf vest was helpful to this guy. You drag it in to give it to him, and the AI would say, yes, this is helpful, no, this is not. And then that's the end of the quest. However, now, in addition to having all these new ways to craft items and collect items, we can talk to them about the quest and say, like, would some earplugs help? So if you're looking through your crafting recipe and you see that you know how to make earplugs, you don't have to like make them and turn them in for the quest and just hope that they help. You can now ask, like, would some earplugs help? Earplugs? No, it's not a sound that's heard with ears. It's more like it resonates directly on my soul. So earplugs would probably not work. I have some enchanted deafening earplugs. Maybe that would help. And you can have more of a conversation with this guy. Enchanted deafening earplugs, you say? Well, it sounds like a possibility I hadn't considered. If they can deafen not just the ears but the soul, then perhaps that's exactly what I need. Let's give it a try, shall we? And then you drag it in, and the new system, which we haven't quite added here, when you drag in an item, instead of just saying, here is the problem, here is the item, does this solve it? We're going to also incorporate the conversation history. So it'll say, here's the problem, here's the full conversation history, here's the item you've been given. So now you can say, like, alright, I've primed this guy to accept my enchanted earplugs. Now I can give him the earplugs. It's probably got a good chance of them helping. But if they don't, then he can talk back and say, like, well, it actually didn't work because of this reason. And then I can give him a new item that solves that. Or I can talk to him more. Or if I want to play and be, like, super silly, I can just take the "you are not Alice" approach and try and convince him, like, actually, like, I have this really nice oak leaf vest, and this guy in this other town had the exact same problem, and when he wore it, the metals actually didn't sing at all. Something to do with oak leaves and singing. And you can try and, like, gaslight him or convince him that that is the item that will help him. Um, there's a lot more work to be done on the AI on the back end there of, like, we have this multi-step process of determining if the NPC thinks that the item will help, but we probably also want another step of a more impartial AI determining if it actually helped, in case you were lying to these AIs. But there's a lot to be done there. I think this is really cool. The game's really shaping up. We're going to add a bunch more NPCs. I'll give them some really flavorful personalities. We're going to add your recipe book real soon. So as you're going around and collecting items and combining items, you can really just collect a ton. And then you will now have a reason to collect all those items and craft all those items. And that is to help all these NPCs in town that you can develop your relationships with. So with that, I think we're going to call it for the week. It's been fun. It's been about 3 hours as well. We got a lot done, and things are almost to the point where things we're at in the systems test, but we have such a bigger world now and more features, more ways to interact with the world, more ways to interact with the NPCs. So it's really becoming like a really good foundation for what we're going to build. So I think what I will do, I know there's only a couple of you in the stream, but I'm going to look for somebody else who is streaming game development. Maybe in Unity, maybe in Godot. Maybe we can raid somebody else. Just pass on the viewers. Let's see what we've got here. I know we've raided JD Does Dev in the past. He's a good Godot guy. I think he does a lot of, like, camera and OCR stuff where, like, you can play games while streaming Twitch using your body and your hands. Let's see what we got. Irish John Games is a good one. Be nice to find someone new, but let's head on over to Carrie Chronic. Just see real fast, make sure he's, like, in English. Don't want to dump you guys off on someone else. He is making a horror game in Unreal Engine 5. Sounds fun to me. Alright, let's roll. Let's head on over there. Raid Carrie Chronic. Alright. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it, and it'll be nice to see you again next week.